Hello, I'm going to talk to you about resilient architectures today and how, as an architect, as a product designer, you need to factor for resilience in your architectures. So, resilience is the ability of your system to bounce back to its normal state given a short period of time. So, if it's too mission critical, you can't have a resilience system. You have to have a fault tolerant system. Let us say that the patient has a pacemaker, and then at that point of time, you cannot say we will create a resilient architecture. There's no downtime allowed in such cases. So, if it's mission critical, then there's no question of resilience. It has to be 100% fault tolerant. Something goes bad with a particular system, it needs to have another fault tolerant thing that will take over from itself. So that is what is fault tolerancy. And so you need to understand the difference between fault tolerancy and high availability when you're trying to create highly resilient applications and systems and products. So you can compare resiliency with fault tolerant systems with the twin engine of a plane. So if one engine goes down, the other engine picks up. So that is what is fault tolerant, for which you need to spend a lot of money to get that done. Whereas a highly available system is like a car's spare tire. So the car is on a highway, there's a breakdown, and you need to stop for a while, and then you can replace the car tire with the spare tire, and then you're back to running again. So it's highly available, except that there is a small downtime. So companies would rather prefer a high available model than spend millions of dollars on the fault tolerant way of doing things. Of course, if it's mission critical, you have to go with the fault tolerant way of doing things. So this brings back to that 3 nines, 5 nines, 2 nines availability. So with 2 nines these days, the downtime is 3 days in a year. So that's not acceptable by anybody. We just saw that the Google servers were down for 10 or 15 minutes, and then there was panic all around. So that's not acceptable. So if it is a 4-9 scenario, that means you're down for around 5 hours. So if it's 5 nines, so you're down for 52 seconds, and if it's 6 nines, then it is couple of seconds is what is the downtime. So you could create highly available solutions based on what the business is willing to take or invest as the risk. So there's no need to deploy an expensive amount of fault tolerancy in the system if the business doesn't warrant it. So during our pandemic and the lockdown, we could ourselves see that we don't need a UPS that will give us a backup time of 3 days or 1 day or 2 days. We just need, whenever there are outages or fluctuations, based on your need, you could go ahead with that UPS. So if it is 150 amp UPS with a 12 watt consumption, and then you're powering 2 fans and 2 lights and then a Wi-Fi router, so it would probably last you for around 7 hours. So similarly, if it's a 220 thing, it will last you for 10 hours and so on. So basically, you don't need to deploy an expensive solution. So just see what is your requirement in the architecture for the amount of fault tolerancy required, the amount of availability required, and based on the use case, you can actually deploy the real architectural solution that would be needed instead of trying to deploy the most expensive thing out there. So you could use this to actually build products and solutions with this resilient architecture feature, so that you should have a business case for what is resiliency. Is it mission critical? Is it non-mission critical? And based on that, you can actually decide what is the amount of money that you're willing to spend on fixing it. So that's resilient architectures for you. And there needs to be the difference between fault tolerant and availability needs to be known here when you're designing resilient systems. So fault tolerancy is there is no downtime needed. So one falls down, the other takes over. Whereas resilient architecture, whereas highly available architectures, there is an amount of downtime that the business is willing to take. And if you're able to do that, then that's creating a highly available solution. So this is, he was leaving you with this short tip on how you can create resilient architectures. So there was this discussion with the client. So we were discussing about creating resiliency in the architecture from all the way from the browser, mid-tier, app-tier, middleware, database, and all that. And then finally, they were trying to fix everything in the architecture, make it completely fault tolerant and all that. But then they found out that the network switches were not fault tolerant by themselves. So what is the point in making the rest of the layers fault tolerant? You're wasting a lot of money on getting everything in the pipeline fault tolerant. But as per the theory of constraints, you are only as strong or as weak as the weakest or the weakest link in the whole pipeline. So in case there is a certain amount of weakness there's a weakest link in the whole pipeline, then there's no point trying to make everything fault tolerant. You might actually live with a high availability system, knowing what is the needs of the business and catering to that. So here is leaving you with this short tip. Do like, share, and subscribe for more such tips and techniques. Thank you very much.